So, right, can you just still did. Just drag that. Great. All right, we'll get started.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 preliminary capital budget meeting. At this meeting, we're going to hear from all the department heads of the various city departments. They're going to introduce their proposed capital budgets. That's just to tell us what they are proposing for the next year. We'll have questions. There'll be opportunity to get more information, and this is just the start of the budget process. So then with these budgets will go out to committee, more questions will be asked. We'll get it down to a point where it's being presented officially in the budget, and that will happen in the spring. So this is the first opportunity to look at it, start asking questions, and start putting together the budget. This is the process that everyone works very, very hard on, all the department heads, the city staff, the council, the committees, everyone starts the project process now, and it goes through March, sometimes even later. So it's a very long process. Everyone's watching, everyone's in attendance, and this is sort of a very careful, thoughtful, and lengthy process. So we'll get started tonight, and I will turn it over to my partner.
Thank you, Councilmember Little. So, as Councilmember just stated, I'm going to briefly go through this, start this the process we go through, but we'll just march this once. To full screen. Okay, so and I'll just start with the agenda that we have, and the city started this preliminary capital budget workshop about 6 years ago. After going through my first year in 16, we found that there were a lot of questions around the capital budget during the actual budget process that we go through at the beginning of the year, and we felt it was probably going to be a more useful time spent with the council as well as the public to be able to just share what the process is a lot earlier in the process with the capital budget. So we started doing, starting for the 17th municipal budget year, we started doing these preliminary capital budget presentations and workshop to just be able to have a little bit more overview for the council, because what happens is finance committee generally sees this, and now we have a capital projects committee that is involved, and a lot of the elected officials, the other elected officials as well, the public don't really get a chance to see the capital budget until the municipal budget is introduced. This provides a preview into what we are working on and considering and prioritizing, and to make these decisions that are ultimately introduced in the subsequent year. So this, I'm just going to give you a little quick budget process, and this just lays it out. Department heads will come on and go over their respective capital budget proposals and projects that they're considering and want the desire to fund next year. And then for those in the public, that this just kind of will give you just a sense of what it is, and then just give you a little sort of snapshot of what our debt service is. For those who don't realize, capital budgets are financed with debt, and so we usually tie that in at the end to kind of give you a sense of where we are today and what we're projecting out for future years. So again, we start this process in August, both operating and capital budget. Department heads will start that process, and then by the end of October, CFO and I will receive the budgets, and that's when we start to do our thing with starting to evaluate, putting it into a much larger document. Department heads are in their respective committees. We'll go over with what they're more focused on the capital earlier on in preparation for this workshop, and then the operating budget is at least the things that are considered at this point, they're going over. And then by the time we get into this point right now, we're at the public workshop for the capital, and we're giving everyone an opportunity just to get a peek at what we're doing and where we are in the process. And then next year, Finance Committee meets with all the department heads during the entire month of January into February, and we go over their operating budgets. Capital budgets are considered, but the Capital Projects Committee is more focused on the capital budget, and they will have meetings with department heads again to kind of go over and fine tune the capital budget. And then the chairs of the Finance and Capital Projects Committees meet with myself and the CFO, and we kind of come to a decision on what we will make the cut for that particular budget year capital budget plan. So this is what where we are right now, and the current fund at 5.2, sewer utility, and then I think the second year in a row we have nothing planned for parking. So it kind of alleviates some of the pressure on our future expenditures. This is actually a really good place. We typically are much higher in our capital budgets. I went back over the last 10 years. There was probably years where we were upwards of 10 million a year at this point. So last several years we've been more in the 6 range. We're at 5.2. So I think the department heads have really fine-tuned their process and are prioritizing earlier. It is a very hard decision-making process that we go through because sometimes we just need to replace equipment, vehicles, and then there's roads that need to be paved or buildings that need to be maintained. So this is where we are. So I think we're in a pretty good starting place. And this gives you just a juxtaposition to last year and this year. Most part, we're down. DCP is a little bit up, but that's one project basically that we're looking to do next year. I'll leave that up to Mark. And then DCS always kills our capital budget. Yeah, I mean, that's your road improvements. These are where there's many projects we take on that run through the Department of Community Services. So that's where we are at this point. And then the sewer. Last year was every 3 years you'll see a jump in our sewer utility capital budget needs. It's tied into the joint meeting. Every 3 years they do their capital budget plan where you'll see that jump every 3rd, 4th year. So last year you saw that jump, and then we're majority of our projects are locally needed. So, but it's down from last year. And then this is our 5-year projections. The PP column is your prospective projects. We don't know, for example, in the administrative clerk, that's a readout whenever that happens, or ordered by the county. So right, that goes into a prospective project. DCS, there's probably a number of projects that are out there. I'll let Director Schrager go over that. But you can see this is sort of just leveled out. Some years you would see bigger spikes. We're really trying to keep to this level ask pattern over the next 5 years. It's still high, and you'll see that our CFO takes you through the debt and what that potentially look like if you would approve everything that is asked for. So there's definitely a prioritization that has to happen this year and in future years. And it's just the sewer utility, as you can see, these jumps every few years. Just the joint meeting. And that's where I'm going to hand it off, and I'm going to ask Chief Evers and Deputy Chief to come up, and they can go through the fire department.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody here today. Give the opportunity for the fire department to talk about our needs going into 22. Basically, our total request for 22 is $230,000. Most of our requests are usually with routine yearly expenses, turnout gear, fire hoses, a lot of equipment that falls under standards. And Deputy Bimba is going to talk more about our 22 needs. He's going to come up here and talk about that. But just looking forward, forecasting out for future of 23 to 27. This is our potential exposures moving forward. We are exploring different, this year we have a lot of vehicles that we deferred because of the firehouse project. That's a large capital expense for the city. We recognize that. So we deferred a lot of vehicles, but at some time we need to replace those. We did explore this year with one of our new vehicles on leasing it, the first time we've ever done that. So we kind of put out what the exposure could be with brand new vehicles, but we're going to see how this lease works out. And if we do a lease purchase moving forward, it'll alleviate some of the big number of capital expenses you see on this. And it kind of steer the money more towards our operating budget, where we have leasing costs versus having a lot of capital on it. So something we'll kind of keep you abreast as we move forward, how it works out. But that could lessen some of the capital liability moving forward. With that, I'm going to turn over to Deputy Chief Bimbo. He'll talk about the 2022 needs for the fire department. Chief, right here.
Our first request for 22 is turnout gear for $30,000. That's a continuing recurring program. The NFPA has strict standards on the life expectancy of the gear, how we have to maintain it. It has a 10-year lifespan, so all of our frontline firefighters, all their gear is newer than 10 years. We have a backup set so that when the gear is being decontaminated, repaired, anything like that, they have a second set to wear. It's a little bit of an increase this year because we've had such a turnover recently with retirements and new volunteers coming on. We have a bunch more that we have to get. So due to the wear and tear, maintenance, and the lifespan, we increased it just a bit. Pretty much every 5 years, the firefighter gets a new set of turnout gear, and that's his first line set, and then the other one will go into backup. We try to use the good sets of backup gear that are out of service for the frontline guys, for the volunteers when they come on until they become active. Our next thing is fire hose, $15,000. Again, it's a continuing program. The NFA requires 10-year replacement on all fire hoses. We have strict standards of how we have to test it, how we have to maintain it. Every year we take several hundred feet out of service due to wear and tear, damage to it. If it doesn't pass its pressure test. So this will allow us to replace a couple thousand feet of the oldest hose that we have. And that's large diameter supply hose, as well as the hand lines that we use to fight the fires. And it also includes appliances that we gate valves and different things like that, adapters that we use with the hose as well. Again, rescue equipment and small equipment. We've seen an increase over the past 10 years in our response to incidents, the number of incidents we respond to, whether it's rescues, medical calls, accidents. The equipment that we have takes a lot of abuse, the wear and tear. We maintain it best we could, but again, it has a lifespan. A lot of that is small gas motors, saws. Included in the rescue equipment would be ropes and hardware that we use for that. Again, the NFPA standard has to be replaced in 10 years. So this is cyclical. We try to replace a little bit every year so that we can maintain our equipment best we can. Small equipment at $10,000. We need to replace a few gas pumps for, again, the increased number of water calls that we have, like with Hurricane Ida this year. And different things, saws and stuff of that nature, that it's just coming to the end of its lifespan. And there's only so much maintenance we can do and keep them running. Our biggest ticket is $160,000 for a station alerting system for the new fire headquarters. This was originally spec'd in our specs that we put out for bid. When we did value engineering last year, we realized that it was something that we could remove from the bid spec and purchase on our own through a co-op or state contract pricing. The contractor would have had at least a 30% upcharge on it for their installing. We also decided if we removed it, we could pursue grant opportunities to get the IP-based alerting system in. What it is, it works with our CAD system that dispatch already has in place. It's much more responsive. It's a quicker response. So as dispatchers are taking the calls, we get the information right away before the dispatcher has to process it and put it in. Unfortunately, it's not eligible for grants in this year's grant cycle, so we put it in as a capital request. That's it for our capital requests. Chief, do you have anything you want to add?
Any questions about? We have any other questions? I think we talked about it in our capital plan or our current request for 2022.
Why is it not eligible for grants this year?
I don't know why a lot of the AFG grants, they won't cover construction costs. We thought because it's not really construction, it would be possible to be allowed. They don't really have a reason. There's just a list of what's eligible and what's not eligible. And unfortunately, that's spelled out as one of the things that's not eligible this year.
And we work closely with the city's grant writers, and we spent maybe about a half hour or so on this topic, and we looked deep into it, what they're applying for, and everybody was kind of satisfied that really didn't look into it, what they offer through the grants. So, money got involved with it. We gave them all the spec for the system, and it just wasn't something that they would fund at the time in its first round of grants.
So Chief, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, you go.
Thank you. So this is a system that can't come over from the old building.
Currently, that we do not have. a system
Oh,
like this.
okay.
Our system is very old, the one we have now, and we decided not to invest money into it, not sure we were gonna be able to bring it over to the quiet quarters, we can maintain what we have, but it is something that is in dire need. Kind of goes along with our building. Like the deputy said, we would be part of a bid spec, we pulled out to save a little bit of money from the but it is something that is, long overdue. We've been putting off on it and hoping to get where we are now with the fire.
And what would your guess be on the typical lifespan
Of the system?
Yeah.
It's all internet based now and CAD based, so I mean, probably a 10-year, as software updates, this system allows for it, so I mean, really, it's kind of new to us.
And it's all modules. So if one part goes, you can just remove that and replace it with a new one. It works over Ethernet cables and Cat6. So it's fairly easy to install and it's plug and play. So you wouldn't have to replace the whole system, but you may have to do parts down the line.
Thank you.
I have just a quick question, and thank you, Chief, and thank you, Deputy. So the way you mentioned it, that you get the alerts almost before dispatch.
Yes.
So that's interesting. So is it going to take the place of dispatch eventually?
It won't, what it does, as the call taker's typing in the type of the call,
Yeah.
it recognizes that and assigns it. Milburn and Springfield already use it.
It's just so much quicker.
It's that much quicker. So before the call taker assigns it to the fire dispatcher, we're already getting notification. And we get a pre-recorded canned computer message that's directing us where to go and what it is. It saves maybe 2 minutes off the call response time. That's all it does, though. The dispatcher has to take over
They
after
still
that.
have taking the calls, but do they need as many? Maybe they don't need as many. There.
Yeah, that's something I don't know as far
Very
as
serious.
dispatch.
Depends on it, it gives us a heads up to stop what we're doing, get down to the floor, get a gear on, and then while we're doing that, dispatch gather the information, and they start talking where the address is, what their habits are, pre-plan information. It gives a little more of a heads up to get the guys from the first floor, second floor, down to the first floor, get ready to get the gear on. That's safe and light.
Is there a way to include EMS with the system, like to expand it to use EMS as well?
It's right now, it can, but right now it's just for our responses, but it can. I mean, there are, like they call it, it's a plug and play system, so you could expand it if you wanted to. But any EMS calls, any call the fire department goes on, it activates.
And it'll be physically in the firehouse.
Right, well, that's what I'm asking, like, is there a way, I don't.
There's two components to it.
Right.
One, there'll be a rack system in the dispatch center, and then we'll have the
Right.
computer system in our IT room. As long as you have a fiber optic line to connect it, it would be similar to a department that has multiple stations.
Yeah.
So I would think it would be expandable to do AMS.
If they have the same issue, like, that the call coming in quickly and being able to respond quickly. when the call comes in, so.
Yeah.
What it can do is dispatch over like a pager system. So unless they were in the building, they wouldn't be that. It can do that, but that's not what we include in our specs.
Chief, is this something that we can add, look at on our donation?
Well, yes, we're definitely, this is included in our private donation fund. So we included it, pretty much, we looked at it as the things that were not included in our bid spec for the firehouse. It did definitely fundraise opportunity as well as ground. That's something that's narrowed it. Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, because of having to get into the building and do the wiring, we want to make sure we get out in front of it now.
Got it, yep. But there are definitely people that are just
Sure.
only want to donate the capital.
I was just gonna say, you should have led with Milburn over the house, because we're better than Milburn, so
They don't have this system, they have a sunbar system.
we'll see.
At least,
Yeah, actually, I was just gonna say, at what point do you install this equipment? Like, do you have to outfit the building for it? Because when you said plug and play,
Yeah.
I was curious, like, how does that work?
so it's similar to there's something called hardwiring, like electrical, so they do all the roughing work. Get all the hardwiring through the conduit during probably the middle phase of our construction project. And then they'll sit there till the very end, and then like if anybody build houses, you have wiring through any wall during construction, when it's time to put the outlets in, then they'll come in and put the actual modules on the walls. Kind of, that's why we included it now, because if we may get into that phase before the next capital cycle, we want to make sure we have the money appropriated for it, so. But it's kind of two phases, the roughing work is part of it, and then the final finishing installation toward the end of the project.
So this 160 includes, a portion of that includes the wiring.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, what it does, and Deputy knows before, there was a part of that where some of our IT people may get involved with it, but we haven't, they have to go through a couple of classes. There is a small community to get some of our current IT people involved in a part of this installation, but not all. What that's going to be through.
We may be able to have our IT, who's doing the IT wiring, do the wiring for this, because it's a similar cable. They do have to go through a class that the manufacturer gives to be certified to do the install. The rest of the components would be installed by the manufacturer. So we could pull part of it out.
Well, that was my additional question. So does it have to get installed? Like, so when you talk about the grant there, I was just thinking, like, if you pull out the portion of the hardware for a period of time, could you go into the next year with a grant, or this never will qualify for a grant?
I don't know if it'll never qualify, but in order to get the pricing that we're looking at, we'd have to get it as a package with the wiring and the install all together. And that's how we came up with the request for 160. So I don't know. I have no idea where the grants are going to go, but as long as we get the wiring in, when the contractor has it on their schedule, we could look at the other stuff then later.
At least there's two opportunities for potential revenue. One obviously is grants, and the other is fundraising that we want to do private sector, people in the community. So it's good to follow that as well.
And there have been some questions about this topic with outside groups. There has been some, data about what it does. So there has been some interest, in this type of system, possibly, also some profit fundraising.
Is this a subscription for software on an annual basis, or is that going to be all in, or once it's in, is there ongoing costs?
There were some minor yearly subscription costs, again, we have it's a nominal fee, most of that can be absorbed in our line item in our operating budget, we have a line item for subscription for wireless, service contract fees, it'll fall into that. Our current budget could absorb a nominal fee.
Yeah, we'll own the software once we get it, so it's more of a service contract. That would be, I don't know the number off the top of my head.
Okay.
There's a couple of them up there that
And that would, because it's our equipment, it'll be in the dispatch center, so we'll cover both. If something goes wrong with that equipment as well.
Excuse me, Councilmember Harrison's on the line. Councilmember, did you have a question at all?
No, Rosemary, I'm unable to see the screen. And so I am just listening in and will shortly be able to follow along on the PDF that's being forwarded to me. Thank you.
And Rebecca, I appreciate the time. I'm happy to say that there are no new structures on our firehouse project. So breather. Right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please.
It's not.
Good evening, Chief Bartolotti, he briefed me this morning, and he said not to worry about anything, he said you're following the fire department, which always asks for more money. So I was thinking of the It's a Wonderful Life when there was a run on the bank, and the one old woman came up to the window and George Bailey asked her what she needed to tide her over, and she said $17.50, so I'm hoping to do that all year. This isn't gonna take too long. Some of the police departments, 2022 capital budget request is $110,000. That will take care of the police vehicle replacement program. Just to give you a little history of that, since 2014, the police department has been able to maximize its purchasing power by acquiring vehicles under the Ford Motor Credit lease purchase option, which the cost associated with the new vehicle is spread equally over 3 years with an end term buyout of $1. This allows for an acquisition rate of 3 vehicles on the lease purchase program compared to only 1 vehicle if purchased outright. The requested funding for $110,000 takes into consideration the contractual annual lease purchase payment that will be due in 2022 based on the vehicles that were acquired in 2021, as well as the acquisition of replacement vehicles with patrol fleet, which will cover the replacement cycle for vehicles in 2022. So in a nutshell, of the $110,000, $35,000 of that will be used for 2022 payments for vehicles that we received that we just received in 2021, 3 vehicles, and the remainder, the $74,000, will be used for approximately 3 vehicles, which we'll get in 2022. Okay, that's what I have. That's my first one, and I was supposed to click that. I'm sorry. Is there any questions? Yes.
Are there any, I think the answer would be no, but is there any move in the board program or with regards to hybrid vehicles?
And the chief said that question was coming, and yes, there is. Yes, there is. He just started looking into that. He actually told me about that yesterday morning. So this morning I started researching that. I was in contact with a couple of police departments that are doing that. Right now, Los Angeles and New York City Police Department have very large fleets with electric vehicles, both hybrid and fully electric. So hopefully the next time we meet, when we meet in the safety committee meeting in January, February, I'll have some more information on that.
I would love that.
But we're researching
I
that.
think that we need to move in that direction. So
I mean, it'd be a cost. It's, you know,
yeah,
it's not about saving on that one, but on other things, you'd be able to save fuel and the life of the vehicle and the resale.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that. I'm happy to hear you already.
And there's gonna be infrastructure money for EV charging stations coming from the infrastructure bill. So it's the time to do it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. If no one minds, I'd like to just sit. Go for it. Thank you. So it's not a usual occasion when the city clerk's office has requests for capital money. But this year or next year will be 2 projects that we're working on. The first one is the shelving in the city hall basement. Starting in 2019, we really started focusing on the conditions in the basement. It kind of goosed us along when the fire department came and did a little inspection and found that we had some violations down there. And that's really because of the height of some of the boxes piled up on cabinets, boxes piled on top of boxes, making it a hazard for anybody going down there to retrieve records. So we started concentrating on the first phase, which we started in 2019, as I said, trying to reduce the number of records that were down there that weren't needed. They were past their retention period and there really was no value to them and they posed a liability to the city. So we made a concerted effort to get through a lot of those boxes and we reduced it by maybe a good 100 at least. But there's a lot yet to be done with that. This is what the basement kind of looks like. It's a little bit more improved now, but you can see where the piles of boxes are and how they're stored right now. And that makes it difficult for employees to go down there to retrieve records for Oprah requests or any other reason. So it was a big problem. Just advance these a little bit. So the next phase in this project is now to install some shelving. And they're going to be shelving with roller ability. So people can get in and out of the various sections, move around as they need them. It'll give us a more organized and easily accessible way to retrieve records. I've always pushed for scanning records. We do that a lot in our department, and I'm encouraging other departments, including one of the biggest record holders in this department, in the city hall, Department of Community Services. Because we scan a lot of our records and we're going backwards in historic records, we're able to retrieve and respond to open requests in seconds, minutes, just based on those searches. So part of this will be to scan the records and process and improve the efficiency of retrieval. Let me see. And of course, the most important would be to comply with our fire code. Okay, if there's no question, if there are any questions for that, we'll end that one, and I'll take any questions. We're good?
Seems pretty clear.
Okay, thank you. The next one, which I think is more popular, is the council chamber equipment replacement. So we've determined that our current system is about 10, parts of it is 10 years old, some of it's more towards 15 years old. Every year we experience more and more service calls, and we have vendors. That's the biggest challenge for us in our department, because there's so many different parts of equipment. There are different vendors that are responsible for that equipment. So it's hard for us. We have to determine what component of the current system is failing, and we're no experts. So, if we call the wrong person, it's that much more of a delay. So this has been an ongoing problem, and it's becoming more frequent. And then the last is pursuing the hybrid public meetings. And mostly everyone knows that at our council meetings of late, because of the pandemic and introduction of Zoom into everybody's lives, people have come to find it very convenient to attend council meetings virtually. And so when we started returning back into in-person meetings, there were people in the public who would come to our meetings and express an interest in continuing to at least have that ability to attend meetings virtually if they couldn't be here in person. So with that, the challenges that were presented were the compatibility with existing equipment, and that would be more so for the broadcasting equipment that we use with HTTV. Not every municipality has a local station, but we're fortunate enough to have that. And so we have to make sure that whatever system we use has to be compatible with their equipment. Buying a new system and replacing fully would minimize the number of vendors that are involved in this system. So the vendor that I'm currently speaking with would be the only point of contact for us. We would not have to go through that process of taking a chance and determining on our own what the problem is. We call them, they would come out, and they would determine who they need to contact, if anybody. A new system would, of course, provide more reliable, high-quality audio and visual capabilities for those hybrid public meetings. And I say if pursued here because we need to all keep in mind that while it's a matter of money to put such a system in place for hybrid meetings, but we still are waiting for guidance from the state. the state, we're still in a state of emergency, the general state of emergency, and that allows certain bodies to still have those virtual meetings. However, when that state of emergency is lifted, we won't know if the state is going to allow municipalities to continue to have those types of virtual meetings. And there's a lot of legal ramifications tied to that. So until we know for sure what the state is going to allow or not allow, we are incorporating this into, you know, what we're planning on doing, but, you know, it's all up to what the state allows us to do. So the solution here is to find a proposal or get a proposal through a state contract or a cooperative pricing unit that would reduce the need for us to create specs on our own, which we would end up having to hire somebody who's professional, who knows how to write that kind of thing, because our office wouldn't know how to do that. So going through state contract, the state has already done the work for us. And as long as what they're offering is what we need, that's the easy solution for a contract. I have obtained one proposal so far, and it's through a cooperative pricing agreement. And I know I've had questions about, is the 50,000 enough? And I will tell you that the proposal I received does incorporate hybrid capability. It's under the 50,000. And I think the reason for that is mainly because part of that proposal, the vendor said that because we have such great quality cameras already installed down in the council chamber, there wouldn't be a need to replace them. So that's a significant savings. So I think that's why the cost is reasonable. And that's all I have for that. So my proposal is for $50,000. As I said, it's under the 50,000. It's under 50,000, the proposal that I have. So I'm just waiting for a go ahead to move forward with it. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing the work on this.
You're welcome.
Good news.
It wasn't without the help of AJ. He's been tremendous help. He was able to talk to one of the vendors he's had experience working with. So we know we've got a good vendor that will do a great job, and he's got good ideas. So he'll enhance and he'll give us a good quality product that we can rely on downstairs.
We have our new elected council member.
Yes. And I should add
the technology advisory committee as well.
Yeah, after if I do get the go ahead to move forward with this, part of the plan is to meet with the members of the technology advisory committee, just to have them vet it and see, you know, if it meets whatever requirements. Maybe we're missing something that we didn't consider, but you know, it's a good idea, I think, to have them look at it. There's a good resource there. I think it's good to tap into. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have a question.
See, I almost got away with it. Go ahead, Susan.
Thank you, Rosemary. I'm just interested what your colleagues in other communities are doing. Have you all talked about this at all?
Yes, I've checked with the other municipalities in Union County, and there's not one municipality that is even considering hybrid at this point. They're all in person.
Only.
Yep.
Personal.
Only in person.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank you. Right? Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody for allowing the time tonight to present the community programs capital budget this evening. It's not a lot, as Michael said. I have a couple items that I'll be presenting, but we do have a lot of items that are in progress at this point. So capital projects completed or in progress. So the one project that was completed this past July was the Investors Bank track. In addition to resurfacing the track, we did add an additional runway and pit for the triple jump and additional runway and pit for the pole vault. And the reason we did this was to help the Summit High School track team be able to host larger and more important events throughout the season. Everybody, including the coach and any resident that's been down on the track or has run or walked around the track, is extremely happy with the project and the final results. So it was a project well worth it. In progress. We've got the Tatlock and the Memorial basketball courts. As everybody's aware, a couple of weeks ago, the contract was approved at a council meeting. These courts will be done the first part of the spring once the weather turns and starts to warm up. They will be milled, repaved, color coded, restriped, and we'll have new fiberglass backboards on all the courts. Community center grading. I'm working with Aaron on a plan that will allow individuals with disabilities to get down to Long Field from the parking lots as well as our building. Currently, if people have handicaps, they need to go out to Morris Court, go down the street, make a left-hand turn and enter that way, which is totally unsafe. So Aaron and I are coming up with a plan to do that at this point. In addition, we need to regrade the back of the building, add some topsoil, and cover some footings on the back of the Investors Bank gym. Showmobile replacement. So as everybody's aware, our current showmobile is over 20 years old. So we will be replacing that one with a new one this year.
I feel like I take my life to my hand. And having speakers that work would be great.
So citywide playground master plan. So as we all know, our city playgrounds are in need of replacement. There's been a lot of discussion over the last few months about our playgrounds. I know it, you know it, everybody knows it. It's time for our playgrounds to be replaced. Aaron and I are working on hiring an engineer consultant to do a master plan for all of our playgrounds. The goal of the master plan is to provide options for each playground, provide cost estimates for all the playgrounds. And in addition to the plans, we will make sure that they are sensory friendly and handicap accessible. That will be a major part of all the planning. Once this is done, this will be our guide for all the playgrounds with the city and how much money we will need to allocate towards these playgrounds for the future capital budgets. Keep in mind, in order to do a playground right, we're looking at close to $1 million, if not over $1 million. As you recall, Westfield just did a major playground in 2018. It was $850,000. So that's the numbers we're looking at. So in addition to capital money, we will be seeking alternative funding through fundraising, corporate money, as well as grants and any opportunities we have to raise some money for this. Tatlock Investors Lighting Study. So as part of the Tatlock redevelopment plan back in 2018, and the #1 priority amongst sport groups in the town is lighting Investors Bank Field and Upper Tatlock. I'm working on finalizing a contract with Tom Miller from PPD, I'm sorry, an engineer and consultant on possible lights. The proposal will identify all aspects, pros and cons, that deal with lighting athletic fields in the community. The last item that's in progress is the Wilson Paddle tennis courts. So I've been in contact with Riley Green Mountain, which is the #1 paddle tennis installer in the Northeast. We will be meeting at some point in the new year to look at our courts, repair what we can, and come up with the master plan of the entire area. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully in January, we'll be out there and we'll be able to make that happen. So my actual request for this year, I have 2 items, total amount of $610,000. Priority number one is maybe playground and the basketball court. This will be for $600,000. That is the request. This will be the first playground that will be renovated. It's centrally located, heavily used, and has not had any major work done since 1998. The basketball courts will be resurfaced, color-coded, and fiberglass backboards will be added. The picnic area will be improved with new amenities and plantings. This will make this facility in the center of Summit an attraction for everybody. The second priority that I have is park furnishings. This is like every year I request $10,000 for park furnishings. This is the annual replacement of park benches, trash receptacles, tables, bike racks, signage, and other furnishings that help the parks. Future priorities. We've got Tatlock, Memorial Field, and East Summit Playgrounds. In 2023, I'll be requesting another $500,000 for Tatlock. In 2024, I'll be requesting $500,000 for Memorial. And in 2025, I will be requesting $500,000 for a playground in East Summit, most likely at the community center. The Tatlock redevelopment plan. We have completed a number of projects down at Tatlock. We replaced the turf at Upper Tatlock, Investment Bank Field. We redid the track. We renovated our tennis courts. We will be renovating our basketball court, but there's still some outstanding issues down there that need to be taken care of. Potentially lights, new restrooms by the concession stand, ticket booths, walkways with soft lighting, new fencing, parking lot, renovations to the fields, the cow pasture, which we like to call the field in the back behind the scoreboard. And then we have a field in between the field house and the tennis courts, possibly renovating both of those so some of our athletic teams can play on them. And all that combined with some other issues or some other items is close to $2 million. So that'll be spread out over the next 5 years as well. And then lastly, at the Summit Family Aquatic Center, our slide replacements, our current slides are 20 years old. They are definitely showing their wear. I would think I'm putting money in, I think it's 2023 or 2024, $500,000 for replacement. In addition, we have some renovations that need to take place in the bathhouse. So I have money in there as well. So that is my presentation. We went over maybe playground and we went over park furnishings. So I am open for questions.
Well, you said that the playground would be close to $2 million and you budgeted $600,000. Are you assuming that there will be grants or other sources of funding?
That's the plan.
Okay.
That's gonna go to
This is matching grants, matching funds.
Right.
Okay.
It's gonna only get you like one swing.
That's what I was wondering, you're very small playgrounds. Okay, thank you. I think maybe playground, because that's the right call. Absolutely.
I remember park hopping with my grandma. She would take us to all the different parks, and I remember very clearly when maybe it was brand new.
Right.
And it's exactly the same.
Yes. And you're old.
More so, just since the meeting started. I would love to switch around the order of how we're doing some of the other parks. I think, Tatlock gets a ton of love. And I think, trying to spread equitably around the city, the investment in our playgrounds is a good idea. But obviously that's a discussion for another time.
And I can, the reason I have it in this order is because Tatlock has had the most large structures taken out for safety reasons.
Yeah.
So that's what.
That makes sense.
But we can discuss this.
That makes sense. Thank
You're welcome.
Is Tatlock Washington School?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's ours.
Did they fundraise for a new park? Or was that just Franklin?
No, they did not, although I've been in contact with the PTO president over there and they're willing, once we get this going, to donate money towards the playground.
Okay. So I feel like Franklin did a full
They might have, I don't.
Yeah, I think they funded the whole
The
thing.
difference is that Franklin is supportive of it,
Not right.
whereas, yes.
Right, so we're-
Washington. kind of
So
care.
we're responsible for maybe Tatlock, Memorial, and we also have one at Wilson, but that came in right after Hurricane Sandy. So they're the ones we're responsible for.
Susan has a statement.
Susan?
Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome.
Ken, I'm curious how you have leveraged FEMA funds that were made available to communities for all of the adjustments that had to be made, and what is your plan for incorporating anything in 2022?
Susan, I wish I could answer that, but that's a city administrator, Michael Rogers, question.
I guess I'd ask the question back, Susan, when you're talking about FEMA funds, for what?
There has just been a tremendous amount of funds that were made available for things that Mark spearheaded with Grace and with Bridges and with Partners in Town to make sure things were done, with I guess sanitary upgrades and things like that. And so I thought we would have some reporting on how we leveraged those dollars, and if there is any impact on the capital budget that will be handled by other funds.
I mean, FEMA funds are typically for any type of emergency storm event, anything those type of reimbursements. Now, if there was some damage in the storm that had occurred this year to, let's just say, a playground, there would be, potential reimbursement for that. There isn't anything that is active for pursuing for any damage related monies to any of our fields. But there's been a lot of money. I mean, if you're thinking about just last year and CARES Act money, or
Yes, yes.
CARES Act, we sought every dime we could for those funds, which have been exhausted. And then the American Rescue Plan, we're getting our funds that we're using towards the general fund as a revenue. Now there's the infrastructure bill. There's all sorts of federal money that's coming this way, which we'll explore. What would be eligible. So those are the things. And typically in the capital budget, you'll see a full cost estimate. If there's any grants we can pursue or any other monies that are available, we'll pursue it.
Okay, so I thought some of the CARES money also came through FEMA as well, anything COVID related. And
You're correct. There was FEMA funds that were offered, but we had fully exhausted through the CARES Act funding. So
Okay.
we saw all of the reimbursements through there, but nothing toward with FEMA.
and
Although
so,
trying, and let me rephrase that. So we initially sought all the funding. There was a portion, if you recall, that was not, they ran out of money. The county stopped distributing money. There's about 160,000 that's out there. Tammy did go through this process of trying to collect monies from FEMA. So that is in progress. I forgot about that. That was going back to 2020. We are trying to seek reimbursement for those funds. So that's still outstanding. That's correct.
and what would that be reimbursement for?
Those were for costs associated with the pandemic in 2020.
Okay, okay. And we don't see any needs that surfaced that came up in 2021 or going forward, we don't see anything related?
Nothing pandemic related, other than revenue loss. That's what we're going to be using American Rescue Plan funds for. And we'll continue that when the second 50% tranche comes in. in 2022.
Mhm. Okay, I guess probably the biggest thing on my mind was all that was done through the food insecurity that was handled so fantastically by community programs and Mark in partnership. And I didn't know if there was any thoughts about going forward, how that might be weaved into 2021, 2022, not 2021, 2022. What thoughts, and if there was any capital, or is that going to come through operating?
It would be more of an operating discussion, I think, what now I'm following you with what of any costs related to anything we're doing with under that sort of umbrella for assistance. That wouldn't be applicable to what we're talking about right now as the capital project, but there might be something that in the operating realm, we would have that, we would seek maybe potential assistance for any types of, I mean, there's probably stuff that you're thinking about that we can sort of follow up on that, what you're thinking about that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Good evening. I'm Aaron Berger, Director of Community Services. Not my first budget presentation, probably with that title though. So I represent the Department of Community Services. Thank you for having me tonight. That's the 7 disciplines that kind of fall under community services. We do quite a bit of affordable housing, code enforcement, construction engineering, environmental planning, and public works. So we oversee the city's largest asset, which is the city's infrastructure. It's not always pretty, it's not always seen, but when a sewer collapses 20 feet deep and takes 50 feet of road, you suddenly remember how important that infrastructure is. Our key responsibilities, that details everything we maintain. Important to point out, besides some of the sanitary and storm structures, which we have gained a few over the years, it's not really going up, so we're not adding that much more, but it's all getting older. So it is all aging at the same rate. We will add a traffic signal at some point in the next few months at River and Chatham Road, but otherwise, we're not adding that much infrastructure, it's just getting older and somewhat rapidly. Total budget request for this year is $4.195 million. I'll detail a little bit more. This is just a comparison from last year to this year. Obviously, sitting on the CAPS committee, we're always trying to work within the city's capability of funding capital projects. Last year, there was some expenditure, we were a little down. Generally, DCS tries to be in that $3 to $4 million range, which is what is needed to maintain our infrastructure as well as our equipment and buildings. You can see the increase is just primarily general infrastructure, some variations in the buildings and equipment listed as well. Some 2021 highlights, I'll speak about those road projects in a minute. We did have to update our stormwater management ordinance by state requirements earlier this year, but a big one that will be launched more formally soon is our GIS platform. It's finally been completed. It's being used internally now. So this is just an image of what DPW crews or engineering crews have out in the field on their either phone or just tablet or whatever they have. So we're removing paper maps, but it's fantastic because what we were using before that was a combination of tablets, paper maps, and then this gets updated essentially almost real time, but it's not that the stuff changes too rapidly. So infrastructure is critical for what we list there: pedestrian vehicular safety, maintaining our property values, reduce expenses in the future. Obviously, it's easier and cheaper to maintain a road than to replace the roads. We're very active with that, including micro paving instead of, which is prolonging the life of the streets that we have. And for emergency services, we obviously use our infrastructure quite a bit. More specifically, pedestrian safety. Engineering oversees crosswalk beacons, which you'll hear the phrase a lot, RFB, which is the rapid rectangular flashing beacons. That's the push buttons at the crosswalks that flash. They're becoming more common. Crosswalk visibility, sidewalk repairs and lighting. Stormwater and sewer system, no shortage of 100-year-old systems in Summit now at this point. We are trying to upgrade them as much as we can. Always needing improvements. Storms are not getting any less frequent or any less intense. And obviously that impacts health and safety of the citizens. And obviously we saw in Ida, emergency services ability to get across town. So the goals of all our projects with roads is always to continue to have a rideable surface that's safe. Storm and sewers is to extend the infrastructure life, decrease line overload, service obviously the public, and traffic calming and sidewalks is pedestrian safety. So some of the highlights from this past year. On the surface, it just looks like 6 road projects, which technically is pun intended, but these are actually very different. So Westminster over there was the first project the city did as a co-op, which is essentially the city served as the general contractor for it. We use the Morris County Co-op to have a contractor do the curbing and then a different contractor to do the paving. Significant cost savings when you do it, but the burden does fall on the city. And it only works for some roads that are not complex. The downside is you're lining up multiple contractors, so you might have the curb done for a month and then the pavement. But that's the first time we did it. We will definitely look to do it in the future. Manor Hill Road was all DPW. Again, very big savings when we can use our DPW crew to do it. You have an amazing public works road department who's capable of doing that, big savings. Again, that's not where we're going to add sewers and curbs, so they're able to do it. Edgar Street was a bid project where it was designed in-house, put out to bid. Smaller project, it's just a cul-de-sac street. Somewhat simple, a little bit of sidewalk and sewer work, but mostly just mill and pave. Followed by Butler Parkway, which followed the same process where we did design it in-house, put it out to bid, but obviously much more complex, both in dollar value and just that was a road narrowing, traffic calming. We have some raised intersections, striping, repaving, sewer upgrades. So that's a more complex project. Locust Drive was a hybrid. So that was, we had a contractor do a little bit of concrete work and then DPW was able to do that. And Public Works was also did Blackburn Place this year. So it's just kind of a whole view of the methods we use to pave roads. And in the end, we have 6 newly paved roads. So our ask for this year has a little bit of everything because we have more than just roads. We have sewers, we have buildings. So we do have 8 road projects. And in there also, we do have the micropave program, which has been in there pretty much every year since I've been here. And I know it's been there before that. I guess the roads in this year's micropave program were the roads that were paved when I first got here, like 2010. So that's kind of how the program works when you get to 10 years out. Now we're doing the preserve it before we have to pave it again. So we're hitting, this is the neighborhood of Parkview over by Memorial Field. So there's a Safe Streets to Transit project, which would be the Village Green. If we can get the funding, we do apply. Every year, we did get it about 2 or 3 years ago, and we were able to do the southwest quadrant, so we're hoping to do the southeast quadrant soon. Stormwater DEP requirements, they're always becoming more of those with the new regulations. This year after Ida, we are looking to actually do a TV and cleaning project of our storm sewer lines. We can do it for sanitary, but Ida really highlighted the need to take a look at some of our storm sewers. New line item is downtown infrastructure repairs. It's not a big ticket item, it's just 10,000, but there's so many things that just come up that we don't have a budget for periodically. Street lights get knocked down, the pump at the horse trough needs to be replaced. So there's a tree well needs to be overhauled. So that's a new item you'll see this year. The curbing program has been in there for about 3 or 4 years and it's finally come up. And what this is to curb streets that don't currently have curbing but aren't slated for a capital project. One example would be Passaic Avenue, which is actually a county road. So the county will never put in the curbing, but that's a project there, or a section of Hobart Avenue has, or Hobart Road actually, is another one. DPW will be at it again. They try to do 3 streets each year. There's the 12 streets to be micropaver, which we talked about. Woodmere Pond right-of-way improvement project. This is not the pond itself, as it's not the city's responsibility. That's tied to the properties there. But we do have significant landscaping issues around the pond. You have trees with root exposure, which is becoming a hazard. You have the ash trees, so it does need some work around the perimeter, which is within the city right away. And it's not just a couple of trees we can do in-house. It is a pretty significant project. Drainage improvement projects is, we follow the drainage assessment report we release every year. We haven't identified which projects would be specific this year, but it's every other year program. So this year it's due. Warning signs is just ongoing. RFPs we talked about. Traffic signal upgrades is every other year as well. That's we have 31 signals that we maintain. Most of you are aware, but even if it's on a county or the city is responsible to maintain them. Then we have the every other year pedestrian safety projects. So specifically, there is some of the projects in our budget that's in your packet. You have it. I won't go item by item right now. We could have, if you have questions, we could talk about them. But that is the 20 projects we have identified just under infrastructure. Going through the timeline, which every year, everyone, that some people believe if it's a 2022 project that it'll be done in 2022. Only about a quarter of our projects are able to follow that schedule, just because by the time funding is available, usually in the summer, and we go through the design process, we start hitting the colder weather. So realistically, any project of significance will be done in the spring of 2023. Equipment purchases, some interior building that might happen, but this is a general timeline that we would follow, assuming the budget's approved around June. So. Onto vehicles and equipment. We are responsible for maintaining 500 plus pieces of equipment, vehicles. Keep in mind, equipment is, lawnmowers, leaf blowers, hedge trimmers, in addition to dump trucks and tractors. So it's not that we have 500 vehicles on the road. We are requesting $410,000 for vehicle replacement. Main item in there is the garbage truck. They do run about $225,000, and one is due to be replaced. The snow tractor is a smaller ticket item, but it's pretty obvious what that is, just for moving snow on the smaller areas, parking lots, and sidewalks. The log splitter or mill is very important. That's right now, if you've been in the transfer station, there's a lot of vegetative debris, especially in logs. So the current price to remove that would be about $50,000. Now we're regulated by DEP, so we can't keep those logs there forever. You generally have been very lenient with us, but it's only a matter of time before they want us to literally get it out within 30 or 60 days. If we are able to split wood like Westfield does, it is something we could consider either selling or giving back to the residents. And the equipment itself is only $50,000 or $60,000. So that's something we're really looking for to doing. So one, we could kind of reuse the material we have, but two, ultimately it's a very big savings because we have a very active tree program. And again, back to storms, every time we have a storm, we've just created more firewood or logs to be disposed of. The message board is for the transfer station. Anyone who's been at a transfer, actually everyone's been to the transfer station, but you see, we're still doing the old gas station way of the next day it's closed. This would be we're signed out. Where is it? This would be to give information to the people who visit the transfer station, be it the next free market date, the next closure date, which a year like this is very important because both Christmas and New Year's fall on a Saturday, so we are changing the schedule for this year, but also free market, any sort of information that we could put out that would be useful for the residents. So for our building funding, City Hall is $215,000. Most of it is general upgrades just to the facility. The building did rapidly become 30 years old. We're still working. We've done a lot of work on the HVAC system, the main components, but now we have to get into the internal parts, whereas you will see sometimes the large conference room can be a meat locker, or sometimes it's an oven. Those are the parts that are not affected by the major overhaul we did. Now we have to get into the interior. So we do have a consultant that is preparing plans for us, and we'll just kind of chip away because it is a large system. So some funding is included in there. We also have funding in there for a file system. We have a lot of files, as was mentioned earlier, and it's not just we have planning and zoning. I think the item that's overlooked is construction. So we have 100 years of construction permits. A lot are kept up here. We have offsite down in Public Works, but we definitely need to move stuff downstairs, as well as providing some in the Board of Health area for their records too. So it's in addition to what the clerk's office is asking, but also very important because if you've been at DCS, we were starting to burst at the seam just from files. DPW and DCP locations. DCP locations is just community center in Cornog. It's just a few dollars in there just for general upgrades that happen. Community center is essentially just 2 or 3 years old now, but now as we start getting some fixtures will need to be replaced on the other end. Since we do kind of oversee the building there, it's going to be under us. Public Works has some items. One would be air conditioning in the garage bays. So when it's 110 degrees outside, it's usually 140 in there, and that's where they're keeping our vehicles as well as police and fire on the road. That's why you'll see all the doors open in the summer. So it's also a continuation of the garage door replacement program. So those are a few items that are listed in there. Transfer station has the same ongoing issues. The Packer system, it needs to be upgraded. We did authorize that master plan study a few months ago at council. That feedback, I'm sure we'll get at the beginning of the year, which will identify more items that we need to either do or start budgeting for. Also, we have the ongoing remediation there, which generally now is just doing some reporting to the state to keep us consistent with the state's program. So overall, it's 3.155 million for infrastructure. It's an increase from last year. That's your roads and drainage and pedestrian safety. 410,000 for vehicles and equipment. It's going up about 67%, and buildings is 630,000, 12% increase from last year. We could do, so we keep stores separate, or I can just go through it all. We'll do it.
Yeah, go through it.
Okay. So we can almost hit like a period there and start with a paragraph that the sewer utility is funded by a user fee. But the same person would be presenting it, so there's no real point. We'll just keep going. Sewer utility, what we do is we collect the city sewage and we deliver it to the joint meeting down in Elizabeth. It is about 5 million gallons a day that we collect. That's on average. When we have rain because of the infiltration, it does get higher, but that's about what we average. You can see in 2020 it was 4.63 million gallons. We do have 4 pump stations, 11 total pumps, which do get costly to operate and replace. We have some equipment and 82 miles of sanitary sewer mains. So big program we've been doing now is the sanitary sewer cleaning and inspection, which has been fantastic. We've been focusing primarily in the southwest section of town. You've done some bid awards, about bid advertisements we brought to council. They're all labeled by a letter that means absolutely nothing to anyone. We have the maps and we have them posted. So, you know, we currently have C and K is starting the section C and K, and that is getting more into the Memorial Field area over there. It's where we have high infiltration. Our goal is within 8 years to do the whole city network. We're in about year 3 or 4. And we do identify through that, you will find areas of your pipe that need immediate attention, which is, you know, it's better to find it that way than the other way, which is middle of the night, holiday weekend, and sewage flowing 10 feet in the air. So that's, there is money in there for that. This is another year. We've been trying to every other year. We'll do 2 programs in 2022. On the topic of sewer cleaning and jetting, we do have a sewer jet, which is just to clean the lines. It's not to camera inspect them, but as we know, that has to get shut down in the winter. That's because it does not fit in any of the garages we have. So Last year, well, this year, I'm sorry, we did start the garage for it. It's just a standalone garage for the sewer jet down at DPW. Should be completed this month at some point, at least the concrete part, and then we'll start framing it out to get the roof on. So realistically, we probably don't have to shut down our sewer jet this year, which would be fantastic. But otherwise, if it is needed, it's just a matter of adding a half hour every time to de-winterize it and then winterize it after it's used. Vehicle replacement that we did last year, we have the dump truck that we need. Anyone who's been following anything with supply chains, there's nothing available. This is going to take us a year and a half to get. We've actually been told you're better off waiting because they're doing it based on when you get the queue. You might actually jump the line. So though we have it spec'd, we will not go out to like February to make the purchase. So that number is shrinking. But right now we're told 2 years in some pieces of equipment. And you can't get an answer if it's the microchips, if it's the steel, there's no real answer. It's just is what it is, and we're trying to do the best we can. So total request out of the sewer this year is $1.15 million. As we mentioned earlier, there is no joint meeting contribution, and we're always kind of aware of that to make sure that our budget is very reduced in the joint meeting year to keep it down. So, we are higher than last year, but we have no joint meeting contribution, which last year was $1 million alone. And again, this gets funded through user fees. Overall, sewer infrastructure is $325,000, going up about 31%. The capital projects is just specific items. Usually it's just sewer repairs we've identified. Is going up to 125. Equipment and vehicles. What we have in this year's capital plan is the sewer camera inspection and truck. Because what we do a lot, what we've done forever, is we either rely on other towns to come do the camera, or we just clean the lines, but we're not actually seeing what's in there. So though we might jet the line and clear it, we don't know what we just jetted. It could have been just roots, which is fine. It could have been a massive cave-in, but we don't know. With the emphasis on cleaning, this would afford us to go do some stuff in the house, or otherwise we're paying to have that service done. Some towns have it, but then you're also waiting around and they can't do it in bulk. You just do one quick one for you because they have their own systems and their own staffing challenges. And $320,000 for pump stations. Primarily, it would be Chatham Road this year. We have some issues with the pumps there that they're just getting older. I mean, typically they say in the pump world, your cost is a third for the purchase, a third for the maintenance, and then a third for the replacement. So some of those are getting to be nearing some maintenance until they get to being fully replaced.
Ooh, my favorite part.
So there you go. So that's all for both sewer utility and DCS infrastructure. Is there any questions?
I have a bunch. So there's no money in 2022 for sidewalks, from what so there's from what you said earlier, there's $150,000 listed for 2023 for sidewalk infrastructure improvement. So one is, what sidewalks are you thinking? And second is, I would like to advocate publicly that we move it to this year. And I'm an advocate for Glenside Avenue, Mountain Avenue, and Vault as well. I know they're county roads, but I think we should do it anyway. And I've encouraged residents who are in favor to be here. So that's good. So I'll pause for a second and see if that's what we were thinking by way of sidewalks for next year. And if we can move it to this year, I'm obviously in favor.
Right, so we have some funding available from last year, and I think there was a prior year. We started budgeting for this once the sidewalk policy plan was adopted, which I believe was 2019. Don't quote me, it might have been the end of 2018.
It's 2019.
It was 2019. So, the two projects that were being considered this year and are still out there was Hobart Avenue, as well as Mount Vernon / Providence Avenue, which is under design. So what we did this year with that money was there was a list of about 8 projects that we had from recommendations from either the committee, safety or CAPS, or from residents. And then we brought those forth to the committees, and that was the 2 that we kind of pushed on. So we do have a list. Nothing is set in stone from that list, so we're open to adding any. I mean, having being on a county road is not necessarily, they won't fund it, but they will work with us. I think I might know the engineer, so happy to help us. But because it's not, we didn't complete this year's project, there wasn't any listed in 2022. It's something we could definitely talk about at CAPS.
Okay, I think we should. My second question is Morris Avenue corridor timing has $250,000 for this year. What is that? What does that mean?
So Morris Avenue is a county road where we own and maintain all the lights and what. You have, I wish I brought the number, but a lot of lights are 2 mile stretch. They are not, archaic that old, but they are probably 2005, I believe. So they're getting close to 20 years. They don't talk to each other. So pre-pandemic, we were in the process of doing an RFP to have an engineering firm do a formal study, which would be very complex because there's so many signals. Require a lot of studies. Obviously, the pandemic traffic is not. We're going to do it through the pandemic, and we never can put the RFP out. But this would be for at least the engineering and some of the improvements. And realistically, it would probably result in GPS interconnectivity between them all to make them essentially smarter traffic signals through the corridor.
Okay, and that's not the kind of thing the county would help with at all.
No, the county is very happy to pay for a signal and give it to us and then absolutely walk away.
Is it possible to get funding like for some of the new developments where we're putting in lights to have them contribute to the cost?
Absolutely. Just for an example, so on River Road, the signal that's actually in Chatham and it's Chung, or I think it's River Road again, but that intersection, and then the 7-Eleven, and then Morris Avenue, those all talk. And I can't be sure, 7-Eleven paid for some, and then Sunrise paid for others. I don't know who paid for what, but that was an example of having them upgrade.
Okay, so it is possible.
So it is possible that that number could be reduced and possibly just go for the engineering end of it for this year, and then to identify what's there and some developers to take for that.
Well, yes, what's left for me is the comments on the things that are not listed in the capital budget at all. And I think one is solar. I think we should definitely include just a preliminary plan, or a guess, right, as to some solar project, right? And to my mind, it's the pool parking lot, but it doesn't have to be that, right? And it may wind up being the case that we, share costs or we share revenue with whoever winds up building, and that's fine. But I think because of federal funding or state funding potential being available, we should put something in there. And then the same will be true for EV charging infrastructure for the fleet, the city fleet. If we replace every vehicle right now, we have no way of charging. We need our own city charging infrastructure. And then the other thing is power infrastructure. So, I think a huge, big, multi-million-dollar project is a solar powered microgrid, but we don't have to start there. This is the kind of thing that, right? Like, we can be reasonable about it, right? Like, you can do this sort of thing piecemeal. And I think the way to get started is to just basically get started with one thing, and then, you request grants, and then you're on your way, right? So I think Montclair started, Hoboken started with this sort of stuff, and I think, placeholders for engineering and planning and at least getting an idea of what it costs and the timeline, I think is a great place to start, and I'm an advocate for us doing all those things. So, thank you. Those are my 3 things.
I'll put you in touch with the finance chair.
I heard he's a hard ass.
Yes. So you talked about the transit village funding for the village green. I think the part that's left is the one where maybe playground is, correct?
Correct, yes.
So is there, so that obviously would need to be coordinated with DCP. And are we likely to get grant funding for that quadrant, or we haven't been doing as well the last few years?
Not with the Safe Streets to Transit. We did well, and we thought at one point, because we still had a project open, it's unlikely to get another one, but that one is fully closed out now. So we will apply again. We'll keep trying. I think being that it's the final phase of a, essentially a 3 or 4 phase project should make it a very favorable application.
Okay.
Having, even tying the application that there's a playground component to it, I think would, help the cause, but in the end, there's not many Safe Streets to Transit grants that are awarded. But we'll definitely try. And yes, it would have to be coordinated with the other project.
Okay. And then the other question I had was construction records. You were talking about a lot of the construction office. Can any of that be funded through UCC funds?
Yes, some of their portion can be for what's there. Right now, a majority of theirs is at City Hall, or they have a space at Public Works upstairs in the archive that we call it. So they will be faced UCC, just separate but ties into. In May, the states, at least now, is saying that digital plan is going to be a thing. So UCC offices are running around trying to get to big plan tables, because now you're essentially switching an industry that's been paper forever. And what they review is not really have it already, so they're going to have to get the station. So there will be need for that, and they can fund some of the storage and scanning that's needed, yes.
And then the last question is about the log splitter. Is that different than the grinder, tub grinder that we rent?
Yeah, so the tub grinder will take most of everything but the giant logs. So that's just turning up the vegetative waste that's not giant logs. Some can, we don't pay for that, that's an enormous cost. But the tub grinder take all the other waste and grinding that, or even taking the compost and leaf piles and grind them for a minute.
Okay, thanks. That's it for my questions.
I know you don't get very specific with the RRSP locations. Do you have those planned out, prioritized in order the way you go through?
We do. The first priority would be around 2005. We put in ones that are just on a schedule. Those are at like Lincoln Hubbard School. I believe still at over on Blackburn by Franklin School. Those are ones that just actually we have to go with the USB every year when we get the Board of Ed schedule, put it in, and then it operates that. It's the old technology. So our first goal would be to replace those. Then there's been Morris Court and Morris Avenue at the community center has been requested. Baltus Roll, Ashwood is high on the list. We have I think it's 8 total locations. Yeah, priority 1 is replacing the older technology just because it physically requires a ladder and a USB. The other ones now are either the ones that are activated by pedestrians or ones that have cellular capability. But generally, we want to switch to the ones that we hit the button on. Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry, I'm actually.
Yep.
You list individual increases over the prior year.
Yes.
Does it make more sense to have like a 7-year increase or 10-year increase? Is there a way for us to see that? If we were to look like, is this 10 years period more expensive than say the prior 10 years?
Are you talking about just the capital budget stuff around?
Yeah, because 300% increase, it can vary. Even like in 5 years, you could have a cost that brings out a significant.
So by law, we have to provide a 6-year plan. So that's typically what you'll see is the current year or subsequent year going into 5 years. Comparing the last 5 years is, or the last 6 years is pretty, we can certainly do that. I can see that's go over that. We usually provide that information, not so much in the capital, but the operating, you see historical and projections. But it's a good question. Do you sort of look at that anyway? But it's just not illustrated.
And for the sewer utility, it's almost like an anomaly because when we have the joint meeting year, we actually try to tighten up the capital. So you'll always see like the joint meeting year will be very low. So then the year after, you'll always see high increases. And the year after that, you'll see almost flat. And then you'll see a big drop again. So it's kind of, we do that to try to keep our user fee down, but really just to always respect that we get hit with the every 3-year joint meeting for sure. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Although I just want to spend more money on this slide. Right? Take it.
I have to follow that.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. For those that don't know me, I am Tammy Baldwin. I'm the city treasurer and CFO. And I get the fun part of wrapping up the slide portion of the presentation with the numbers, which I find exciting. Not everybody does, but that's my gig. And with the capital budget, as the city administrator mentioned earlier, the department heads do a great job of articulating the need for capital improvements to continue within the city. And this begins that tough task for the Council for Finance to weigh the urgency and the timing of those projects against the impact that the debt service and repayment would have on not only the 2022 budget, but all the budgets going out in succeeding years. So the first slide just demonstrates our current debt position. This is based on our annual debt statement from 2020. So our net debt at 12/31/2020 and January 1, 2021 is 54 million and change. This also shows the 2021 capital activity. Our debt service payments were 4,660,000. These numbers are all rounded, obviously. That includes principal and interest. And then in 2021, capital budget in the general fund was approved at 3.99 million. And there were new debt authorizations for that 3.99 million in various projects, along with the firehouse at 15.330. So that's the total of the new debt authorizations in 2021. Those debt authorizations were in the form of a note, which is temporary financing as opposed to a bond, which is permanent financing. So this brings the city's estimated net debt projected to 12/31/21 this year to 70 million, just over 70 million. I think it's important to point out for those folks that don't know, you are allowed under New Jersey bond law and debt under the budget laws, you are allowed to go to 3.5% of, it's a whole calculation on the equalized valuation and average of the preceding 3 years, but you are allowed to go up to 3.5% on your net debt. Currently, the city of Summit is under 1% at 0.947. So if the city went crazy and went to 3.5%, you'd be at net debt of 259 million. So I think it just demonstrates that 70 million is a responsible, thoughtful number to have in your debt right now. The projected payment for 2022 debt service is just about 5.5 million. Okay, this slide is pretty straightforward. It shows our existing debt service. These are our bonds. So it just shows you the bond principal payments, the bond interest payments, and what our total payments are estimated to be for the existing debt. And this is our permanent debt, permanent financing, which is through bonds. You do see a little drop off as more principal is paid. You see around about 2026 and 2027, the principal and interest starts to fall down a little bit. And that's typically what happens with your amortization schedules. And usually, as most of you know, you structure your future debt into those years and try to keep things level. So for 2022, estimated, we are currently at 4,876,000 with just our bond repayments. And this slide is our existing note payment schedule. That's a little bit different because this is our temporary financing. Notes are renewed on an annual basis. Just as background, you are required to make an interest payment on the first anniversary every year when you roll over a note, if you don't go to permanent financing. If you hit the third anniversary of that note, you then have to make a principal payment. And it's based on useful life and the cost of the various projects. But that's why you see that there's no principal payment for 2022, because unless, what I'm assuming here is that we're going to go into some financing. If we don't, we're going all the way out with these principal payments. If we do, so you see how it spikes up, because we'll start owing principal if we stay in temporary financing and don't go into permanent financing with the bond sale, which is highly unlikely. If we go into permanent financing, which I'm sure that we will, this slide kind of becomes obsolete because that debt moves over into the bond repayment debt. And I think this is the last one. Yeah, so this kind of sums everything up with the debt service. It takes our current payment of bonds and notes on that first row. And then it shows you the proposed capital improvement plans that all the department heads put forth tonight in the second row. On the third row is the amount of money. Again, it's zero in the first year, and then it's the interest on the prior amount, and then the interest on both 2 years, so on and so forth in that third row. And the bottom sums up the total estimated debt service with the capital improvement plans as proposed and requested. If you left them the way they were, this would be what you'd be looking at in terms of a 6-year outlook for that. And that's it. It doesn't even move anymore, Michael. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. I don't know if it's a lot of detailed information, but if you think of any, you can always reach out to me.
Susan.
Oh, hi, Susan.
Hello, great, excellent, informative presentation. I am your compadre in nerding out over numbers. So how have your projections compared when you did this for 2020? I think you arrived in 2019. Are you close when you go through these exercises, or have you even done a analysis of how you fared in terms of what you projected?
So yes, I did come to the city in August of 19 from another municipality. And it all depends on the structure, on whether the capital improvement plans that are eventually approved change in dollar amount, because that will affect it. Obviously, interest rates in the bond market, the note market can have an effect. Rates have been very low for us, so I think we've been pretty on target. And the fact that the city of Summit is AAA rated by all 3 bond rating agencies, which I think there's only a couple of municipalities in New Jersey that can say that really helps with the rates and that we get from those who bid on our notes and our bonds, which is fantastic. That keeps the costs down. So I think there's a lot of factors that can go into it and change things, but I think it's pretty close, as close as you can get, you know.
Thank you. Can you say more about selecting permanent versus temporary financing? Is that something that is considered affecting our bond rating, our AAA rating favorably? Is that why we go in that direction?
So there's a lot of different things that go into the decision as to when to move from temporary financing in the form of a note into permanent financing. The largest being market conditions. So you're watching the market conditions. We have financial advisors that help us with that. And we watch when the right time is to go into the market. Also, the way that you want to structure your debt. If you can structure the repayment, the amortization schedules, a little heavier in the back or a little heavier on the end, depending on what your debt service already looks like. But it's really based on the market. Also, you want to have an attractive offer. So if you were to go out and say in 2019, we had $5,299,000 was our note. That's not a really, for a note, for temporary financing, that's attractive. We got a lot of bids. We did very well with the interest rate on that note. But typically when you're going out into the market with a bond sale, you want to have more of a significant issue. So it's very common to accumulate, 2-3 years worth, or if you have very large projects, to accumulate that and go out with a bigger issue that's more attractive to somebody, a financial institution that's bidding on that.
So if I heard that correctly, it doesn't affect the AAA rating either way. It doesn't. It's what, if I heard you say, it's really based on how you're interacting with the market and how strong our city's position is. So
Right.
Selecting a bond over a note doesn't affect our AAA rating. It's more other factors.
That's correct. The whether you're going with temporary financing or you're going with permanent financing isn't a key factor in the AAA bond rating. That's a whole nother discussion as to all of the things that go into how the rating agencies decide on what a municipality's rating should be. It's a lot of stuff, but whether you're in short-term or long-term financing, that doesn't really have any effect. What the effect that the AAA bond rating has for the city is that we are able to get more attractive offers. We get more bidders and we get better bids and better interest rates because buying a bond or a note with the city of Summit is a valuable asset.
Thank you. And that helps me also knowing the significance between having $70 million in debt versus what you said legally we could have 240. That's something that affects our rating, correct?
Keeping your net debt low, managing, management of the city, managing that, taking care of your infrastructure, managing your costs. Yeah, all of that and more goes into the rating by the agencies. And they will look, if your net debt if you're every single year you're approaching 3.5%, then you have an issue. That's not where you want to be.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thanks.
I think that's all we have. Presentation this evening. This will be an ongoing process. And I look forward to starting a new year with new finance committee and working with our capital projects, council consultant, and we'll see us hopefully by the end of the first quarter. I guess that's our projected goal for the municipal budget presentation. So, thank you for coming.
They're rock stars. Yeah. We did. I don't know how you do it. Oh, that's great.